He's got to be the last person you want your team when you're chasing points.
A little dodgy call where they should have gone the video ref there, ended up costing the game.
If that was a forward pass, I'll bungee jump with no rope.
You basically can only beat who you have in front of you, so yeah, I think that's awesome.
And they're doing that, so good luck to them.
Crowd is ready, players are ready, referee says go.
G'day guys, and welcome to the NRL Point of Difference podcast. Ready for another bite-sized week of action to talk about, if you pardon the pun. Rago, how was your weekend, and what was your highlight? Let's start off with the positives.
With the highlights, the positives. Okay, well, last week we were bagging out Michael Morgan, saying that how he had a dreadful week, missing 50% of his tackles in that first half, and basically had no idea what he was doing. But I think he hit back at the critics, well, specifically me being a critic, scoring 2 tries. Yeah, just in that Titans game, he just seemed clueless, didn't know what to do sometimes on those fifth tackle options. Even against South, he did get caught out a couple of times where I think he just had the instinct to run. But I think that's why he's a natural 5'8", rather than he's not a halfback. I think he's playing out of position at the moment, but I guess with a new coach, maybe they might fix that. What do you think?
Yeah, well, the 2 tries he scored were both off the back of his running game, and he set one up with that as well. And he's just so threatening close to the line, and it's so good to see him back in action for the Cowboys. They desperately need him, even though they're not going to make the finals. But I think it'll be a good way for the Cowboys to end their season on the back of some good performances.
Yeah, you always want to see a team get a couple of wins towards the end of the season, just so they get moral confidence for next year. You always want to see teams gain that extra confidence so that when they go into the following year that they can back that up.
They're better for it.
Yeah, and it just makes the whole season overall more competitive, and especially that beginning of the season where no one really knows what's happening. There's a bit of confusion as to who the stronger teams are. As for your highlight, what was your highlight this week?
I can't go past Mary McGregor and the Dragons. I thought it was a very fitting way for him to go out. Obviously, he and the Dragons parted ways, so to speak, during the week. And the Dragons, they just really lifted for Mary, and it showed that he never lost the dressing room. I think a lot of coaches, when they do get sacked or when they part ways, there's talk that they lose the dressing room, that the players don't want to play for him. But that was not the case for the Dragons. I think it was a great sign of respect, and I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, see the way McInnes started crying at the end of the game and ended up taking off his jersey and actually giving it to McGregor after the game. It was an interesting thing to see, because usually when coaches get sacked, they get sacked midweek, and then the interim coach takes over pretty much straight away. This was good in that they gave McGregor a farewell, so they didn't leave on bad terms, even though I guess some people will say that McGregor ran the club into the ground. But, it was a good way to send him off. He's been a very loyal clubman. He was a great player back in the late 90s, and he was an Illawarra Steeler boy through and through, and then ended up playing for the merger for a little bit, and then became an assistant coach with Nathan Brown. And then I think when Wayne Bennett came in, he got rid of the whole coaching staff team. And then eventually, once Steve Price came back in, he brought in McGregor, and McGregor was the assistant coach and eventually took over. So, so he's been there for nearly 30 years, I think now. So it was a good way to send him off, and it was great to see the Dragons really lift that game, as you mentioned.
Yeah, well, I hope it's not the last we see of McGregor. He alluded in the press conference that he would like to coach again elsewhere, so it's a matter of time before we see him, and I wish him well. Yeah,
there was also a couple of lows. I'll start off. So with the game of the round that we were discussing last week, that Melbourne and Roosters game, that was meant to be the highlight of the week. But unfortunately, it just seemed to be a very lackluster performance by the Roosters. And I can't really fault them, because they have quite a few injuries at the moment. To name a few, they had Brett Morris, Crichton, Cordner, Hargraves. They had Tupu out as well.
Yeah.
Not to mention that Radley and Verrill's out for the whole season. But I guess you can't really count those because they'll be out for the rest of the year. But not only that, they got hit with the injuries of Keary, Orbison, and Lamb all in the one game. So why are there so many injuries, and why are they all coming at once? And not to mention that, another thing that really grinds my gears at the moment is that injuries are just going to probably ruin the next potential best game of next round, the Melbourne Storm and the Parramatta Eels. That game on paper is a first finals game in round 1. And they've got Munster out. I think Cameron Smith and Jerome Hughes are unlikely to play. Mm-hmm. Although it does provide opportunities for people like Matthew Johns' son, Cooper Johns, to come in and make a debut. So that's exciting in itself. Kind of what were all those?
Well, I just want to touch on that point. I mean, a lot of Trent Robinson, I think, came out and said that the injuries are due to the set restart, which I think some of that may be true. I mean, we might delve into that next week, but a lot of them are contact injuries, and contact injuries, you can't blame the change of the game with that. I mean, that's just the nature of the sport we play. So soft tissue maybe, but the contact injuries, the bones, the one like Luke Keary, Orbison, that's got nothing to do with the speed of the game. Because
Robinson was actually blaming the speed of the game as a result?
Yeah, he said there could be something to do with the set restart. There's more time, more time the ball's in the play.
Okay, well, that's a bit ridiculous. I think he just is finding an excuse to complain about anything at this point. I know that rant against Ben Cummins after that Anzac Day game against the Dragons in 2016, where he abused Ben Cummins for disrespecting their players constantly, and he ended up getting his way, actually, because at the end of the day, I think Cummins didn't referee another Roosters game for about 10 to 12 rounds. So that's the thing about Robinson. He influences the game. And if he's saying that, then I think people in higher positions will actually listen to him and dictate the rule changes. So, yeah, I don't agree with his comments there. And what do you think?
Well, my low for the week, I'm going to counteract your low and say I'm sick of everyone complaining about the Roosters' injuries. Everyone across the board's got injuries, and we always pinpoint the Roosters and how sorry we are for the Roosters, and I'm sick of it, to be honest. So we look at. I did some research during the week, actually, and Newcastle and Brisbane are the two top clubs who have had injuries for 5+ weeks recovery, so long-term injuries, as said by NRL Physio, which. I mean, you don't see a lot of the media complaining about their injuries. We just think as the Roosters, they're a star club. They're up there all the time. And then when things don't go their way, they have a little whinge and sook. And it's mainly the media's fault. They just love the Roosters. But, Brisbane have got 9 injuries, 9 5+ injuries. Newcastle have got 10. Roosters do have 7, mind you, so they're up there.
But that's true. That's true. Newcastle had 2 really key injuries. But I think the amount of talent that has affected Roosters is because they've got so much talent across the board. Yeah. If they have a few injuries, obviously it's going to affect them. Anyone can say that Brett Morris, Crichton, Cordner, those are high-quality players, and if they get injured, obviously they can use that as an excuse. But yeah, I do agree with you that other teams do get affected, but the kind of wide range that Roosters have been impacted. I think with the Newcastle Knights, for example, although they had 9 injuries, they've probably mostly been borderline, and most of them have been in that hooker position. And yes, that's easily fixable, and that's what they did. They got Blake Green to replace that. So I think Roosters will benefit from having Sonny Bill come in. But yeah, I do agree with you in that regard where, yeah, there seems to be a media focus on the Roosters' injuries and making those excuses. But the Roosters having those injuries also kind of impacts the final series down the line. They're probably not going to be a genuine contender moving in if they continue with these injuries. What do you think?
Yeah, well, you might see it as a blessing. You might give these players adequate time to freshen up and come back firing for finals time. Corden has been rested. They're looking after his concussion. So it gives players like that, and Keary's going to have some time off now to come back in finals and really reinvigorate this Rooster side. So you never know. It could go both ways, but you do want your best 17 on the paddock a few weeks prior to the finals to get that momentum building. So I guess we'll just see how that one plays out.
Yeah, I was just going to say with that momentum, don't you want the best 17 on the park every week, as you mentioned, just so that you can build those combinations. Yeah, because if you just throw Keary into a side that's been struggling, you can't expect them to produce results. So I think in the finals, we may have Roosters bow out very easily if we don't see many returns come in as soon as possible. So speaking of the finals, it seems like the top 8 has been solidified at the moment with a 3-win gap between 8th and 9th.
Two win, 4 points. So the Manly's lost to Newcastle, extended that to 4 points, and it may be too far of a bridge to climb for Manly and the Tigers. The Manly play South this weekend, which you'd think if Souths win that game, it'll be all but secured. So Manly, another must. They feel like they've had their backs to the wall for the last month. They've had a few must-win games now, and they've come up just short. But gee, I tell you what, Manly's one team I wouldn't want to write off, and Desi just loves these situations. He loves when they've got nothing going for them, they're underdogs. He just lives these situations. So I'd be wary if I was a Rabbitoh coming up against Manly this week.
Yeah, well, it's still 3 wins outside of the 8 with 4 and against. I know Manly versus Rabbitohs this week, but they need to get the gap dramatically. I think there's almost a 100-point difference between the two teams. Yeah, out of all the top 8 teams, I think Rabbitohs the only team that could probably slip out. I don't see any of the other top 7 teams. Even the top 4 at the moment, I think, is solidified. I think the only team that can really slide in is the Raiders.
And they play the Roosters in 2 weeks, which will decide the top 4. So I look forward to that game.
Yeah, I can see Raiders losing a dodgy game here or there, just to a team they probably should win to.
Yeah.
I could easily see them losing to the likes of Warriors or Cronulla. I think Roosters actually have a pretty difficult run, actually. They've got actually a difficult Final Four. We're looking at their draw at the moment. They've got Raiders, Newcastle, Sharks, and Rabbitohs. That's
all top 8 teams.
Top 8 teams, yeah.
So, and as I said, I think the Raiders and Roosters game will be a battle for that 4th spot, which, geez, sets up mouthwatering clash, doesn't it?
Yeah, it'd be interesting if Roosters do miss the top 4 because everyone's been riding on them this whole year.
You wouldn't want to play if you're a bottom 8 teams in 5th to 8th. You would not want to play the Roosters in the first week.
But do you think that a bottom 4 team in the top 8 can actually win the finals? I know Bulldogs made the grand final from 7th, but
no, I think
they were never a threat that year.
I think everyone's saying it's either the Roosters, Storm, Parra, or Penrith to win the premiership, and the only one outside that would be Canberra. Some of the bookies are saying Newcastle, but I don't think Newcastle are up to it this year. They might win a finals game, but I don't give them much chance at all.
Yeah, Newcastle are a real weird team because they always start games really slowly, and I always say, they're going to have an awful game like they did against Bulldogs. And even that start of the game against Manly this week, they really struggled at the start, and Manly were all over them, and then they hit back. And yeah, they definitely are a top 8 team, but whether they go deep in the finals, that's another question. I don't think they're ready for it this year.
They're a side on the improve. Last year, they would not have come back and beat Manly. So they've improved in that respect, but I still think they've got a bit of work to do to be a genuine premiership threat.
But what about Melbourne? So they're absolutely on fire at the moment. I mentioned to you before the podcast that they had actually quite an easy run there. They versus the Titans, Brisbane, and Bulldogs all in the space of about a month. I know they on either side of that month they actually played the Roosters and. Yeah, they had really good performances against the Roosters on both occasions. Do you think they're the team to actually go through and win the comp?
I do. I think right now Storm are my premiership favourites. Just after the COVID break when we came back to footy, they had a loss to the Raiders. They lost to Penrith. This was before Penrith. We realised how good they were, and we're all thinking, this isn't the Melbourne team we've come to know and hate, really. Because they're always there or thereabouts and winning premierships. But since that, they've just shown that we can't write off Melbourne. And we thought the rule change wouldn't suit them, but they've come out and squashed those qualms. But they've just, even with a few injuries, they beat Roosters without Munster, on both occasions. I know Roosters didn't have many players in the second game. But with a Bellamy coach side, again, the big games, they've done it before. I just think they're going to be the team to beat this year. Yeah,
every year people say, Melbourne are not going to be the same. They're not going to be the same. After they lost Slater, Cronk, people kept on saying that they're not going to be there. But they always managed to make the top 4. I think Bellamy will actually go down as being the best coach ever in any competition. He's even better than Bennett. at least on the short term, because I know he's only been around for a short period of time, but with the time he's had it, and even though he was with a cheating Melbourne team, you've got to remember that Roosters have actually had a fantastic team since 2013, and they've only won 3 comps since then.
Roosters, yeah.
Roosters, yeah. I mean, I know they've won back-to-back, but there was a gap between 2013 and 2018 where they had a really jam-packed team and they still weren't performing. I know there was that one year where Mitchell Pearce, did that thing with the dog. Who knows what he was doing. But besides that, they've had a fantastic team, and everyone rides on Robinson and says that he's one of the best coaches. But, I think Bellamy has just been able to develop the juniors, bring them up, and they've always gone to other teams and just never have kicked on as well as they were playing.
Yeah, they always seem to get these fringe first graders and turn them into world beaters and really reliable, solid first graders. And Jerome Hughes is another one of those players. We thought after Cooper Cronk left, they'd really struggle in the halves, but he's come out last month or so. He's played some brilliant footy, being probably one of their best players. They lost Slater. They've got Pappenhausen. So they've got the players to do it, and yeah, they're my team to beat from here on in.
And they always seem to have great wingers as well. Speaking of Vunivalu and Addo Carr. Speaking of Addo Carr, he was actually in the media recently about having a positional change to fullback. What are your opinions on that?
Well, he's off contract this year or next year, so he's linked to the Bulldogs and the Tigers, and I guess everyone's linked to the Bulldogs with that war chest we spoke of last week. But I actually think he'd be a perfect fit for the Tigers. He was a West Tigers junior, or he was come from the Tigers system. Yeah, he came from the Tigers, yeah. So they've got Dewey at fullback now, which they've paid $700,000 a year for.
That's so typical of the Tigers. They've got so much money tied up in Brooks, Reynolds, and Mbai, and yeah. So why are they spending so much money on average players? And is this really the right decision for them to make at the moment, especially with a fullback that is actually not established in that position? He's actually a full-time winger, and he might fall into the same trap that the Cowboys had with Valentine Holmes, where he's a specialist winger, and they're trying to force him into that fullback position when it doesn't really work, and they're just digging themselves a hole where they have all this money tied up in a player who doesn't have that expertise in that position and can bring them.
They can't get any of the other players. When was the last time the Tigers signed a big name player that every other club was after? They don't really get them, which is why they have to sign these average players who have the potential to be something but never really make it out. Like Moses Mbai is a perfect example of that. He had one good year at the Dogs, and they threw way too much money at him, and now he's just has not delivered, and they want to get rid of him now to free up some space.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where they're just trying to throw shit at the wall and hoping for it to stick, and they're just looking for a short-term solution.
Well, I honestly think that Addo Carr is a decent fit for the Tigers, because assuming they're not going to pay $800,000 for him.
But they will, because you know that Melbourne would want to sign him for at least $500,000.
But he said he wants to go to Sydney for family reasons, so that could help Tigers' cause, because he wants to come to Sydney. But I think Dewey, whatever you want to call him, I think he's actually Dewey, but the commentators just say Dewey.
Yeah, but he likes to be called Dewey.
But that's not his name.
But he likes to be called it, so just call him Dewey.
Dewey. He, I don't think he's a fullback. I think his best position is actually a centre. You look at all the great fullbacks in the game now. They've got that X factor. They've got that agility, that superstardom to them. And Dewey doesn't have that. He's a good one-to-one player. He's a big body, and I think he's better suited in the centres. And then you chuck in Addo Carr at fullback, quick, bit of lightning, bit of X factor, and I think it'll make the Tigers a much better side.
But he's got the same syndrome as Kurt Mann, where there's not really a specialist position for him. I think Dewey was actually playing well at halfback for the Rabbitohs when Reynolds was injured.
Well, he fits a lot of positions.
Yeah, I didn't mind him at halfback, but full-time, that's a different story, and paying that amount of coin. Maybe that's what Tigers were looking at, where they signed Dewey on the expectation that he would play halfback and take over Marshall, but because they're looking to stick with Marshall, at least for this year, maybe that's what they might do, where they might shift him into the halfback position and then find a replacement for fullback. I don't see there's any logic in the Tigers recruitment at the moment, so I can't make sense of it personally.
Do you think Addo Carr can make the transition to fullback?
No, I don't think he can ball play. I think you need to be able to ball play in the modern day game at fullback. And he just doesn't have that skill. Yes, he has speed. He reminds me of Blacklock back in the day, where he was just a great specialist winger, a lot of speed.
Yeah.
And yeah, that doesn't really translate well to fullback. And I think Blacklock actually made that transition to fullback for a couple of seasons and quickly got shafted to the wing after Ben Hornby came through. But yeah, I just don't think I think what is happening is that he is trying to get as much coin as possible, and obviously you're not going to get that top dollar as a winger.
Yeah, fullback.
So he wants to make that transition to wing to justify his pay increase.
I just don't want to see a struggling club like the Bulldogs or the Titans pay overs for a player like Addo-Carr. Those teams need players in the middle to get the wingers the ball. Addo-Carr's not going to go find himself the ball. He's better off on a good team like the Roosters.
Yeah, he needs people to set him up, is what you're saying.
So he's not going to benefit, like the Bulldogs, the Titans, they're not going to benefit from Addo-Carr's services. The Tigers, they could. I don't mind it.
All right, well, also a big news story in this week was that Mary McGregor was sacked. I think we touched on it before and that they got the win. And he was basically making the comment saying that it was frustrating that he had no say in who was playing in what position and what the team was, because there was a selection committee. And I think Dean Young is actually having that issue at the moment, taking over at the club, where there's like a committee picking the team week to week. But, you've got to remember that McGregor was the person who picked Lomax at fullback at the start of the year. And then quickly, when the season restarted, he then put Norman back there and then eventually put Dufty. If it was up to him, Dufty probably wouldn't be fullback at the Dragons at the moment. And he's had a stellar year. What are your thoughts on it? And what are your thoughts on the sacking? And does it make sense what they've done?
Well, I think when a coach is able to choose his team and select his players, that's when they have the most success. Ivan Cleary was having that issue at Penrith with Gus Gould hovering over his head constantly. But now that he's able to do that, it's shown how much it's paying off. The Penrith are flying. So I think if Dean Young can get the players he wants and the team he wants on the paddock, then they're going to have much more success than they currently have. If it's the right decision or not, I don't know that. Clearly, it wasn't working. Mary and the Dragons have been subpar the last 3 or 4 years. Haven't really made the finals once. Is that right?
Yeah. So twice since he came in end of 2014.
Yeah. So 2 out of 7 years. Not a great strike rate. And
at least it's better than the Tigers.
And the Dragons, they've got a good roster which should be playing finals footy. They've got test back rowers, Tarek Sims, Tyson Frizzell. Good Ben Hunt, even though he's not playing the way his pay packet should be playing. So they've got the quality in the team. So it just is a matter of getting the best out of them. Yeah,
I just don't think Dean Young's a long-term solution. So I wonder what is going through their mind at the moment.
Well, Dean Young will coach the next year and a half till Flanagan can coach.
Yeah, I think that's the direction they're heading in. But whether they're going to assign a new coach in the meantime, who knows? I just don't think they should let Flanagan go if they're smart about it, because he's one of the best coaches in the current era at the moment. He turned Cronulla completely around.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, defence actually wins comps, and he's a great defensive coach. And what was that final score in the Storm and
it was
Cronulla?
Like 14-10 or something.
Low
scoring affair.
And I think even in the second half there wasn't a try, or maybe I'm thinking of the Bulldogs-Melbourne game. But yeah,
that's a good point you made, because when Flanagan was the Sharks coach, they were a real gritty, grindy side, weren't they? They brought you down to play the game style they wanted to play. It wasn't a whole lot of flair, which is interesting because the way they're playing now is a totally polar opposite. They're playing with flair. They're setting up tries. Sean Johnson's a real attacking, skillful player. But back then, they were a real gritty, gutsy team. So I guess that's the Flanagan effect. And I know you mentioned he can't coach because of his serving his ban, but come on, he can basically coach between you and me at the Dragons. But there.
Exactly.
It makes no difference.
Exactly. It makes no sense. Like, I don't know how they're operating in terms of oversight, but if there's an assistant, wouldn't he be saying the same things as...
Yeah, exactly. Like, the Dragons will probably think he's the coach if that's the path they want to go down, as not doing the press conferences and not having the title as a coach. So I think it would, if they want Flanagan to be the coach after his ban in 2021, and then Dean Young will coach out until that period.
And if that doesn't work out, they can always sign the Walker brothers.
Who want every job that's up for grabs, don't they?
Yeah, they're just acting a bit too desperate.
Will they ever get a job for the Walker brothers?
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see.
The only thing I know about the Walker brothers is they do short kickoffs.
Yeah, was it Ipswich that they coached? But they were great players back in the day.
Yeah, they coach the game differently. I'd love to see what that means.
Yeah, I think they're very attacking focused, which is completely opposite to what we were discussing. That you need defence in order to win a comp.
Yeah, I guess that suits the Queensland Cup and reserve grade styles because they're very high scoring games.
Yeah, because they don't even know how to defend. You see, I remember watching one of those under 20 games where a player just tapped the ball from the 20-metre restart and just ran the field.
Cool.
When do you ever see that in an NRL? I remember Inglis doing it once from a tap against Cronulla.
Well, big Marky Nichols did it against Brisbane on the weekend.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But that is Brisbane.
Yeah, I remember that Law try. I won't forget that. We're off the line dropout where he just twists and just ran straight. That's unheard of. Brisbane went all sorts at the moment.
They're in even more all sorts today after their 10 of their players who went to that pub in Brisbane have now been fined 5% of their annual salary, and the club has been handed a $75,000 fine. So,
see, I like that. I like that. I think 5% of their salary is will hit them in the pocket, and that's a penalty based on percentages, and I really like that. It's not across the board where they just fine them $10,000. Yeah, I mean the poor reserve grader who just joined them for a quick beer will get fined $10,000. That's going to be more than 5% of his salary. So I think that's fair.
Yeah,
and it really sends a message to the rest of the NRL to stand up in line and don't act against the what is it, Project Apollo?
Yeah, especially in these times. It's just there's no place for it. So I'm glad the NRL have taken hard action, and more particular with Tavita Pangai Jr. He's been. Well, we spoke about last week that he was sacked by Brisbane. He hasn't been officially sacked.
No, that's not the news coming out. So Brisbane are completely denying it. So what's happening with him at the moment?
Well, they're saying that his contract for next year, he might not be registered. The NRL might not register a contract because of the selfishness behaviour that he's displayed these last couple of weeks, which I think is a fair enough stance from the NRL. He's put the game in massive amounts of jeopardy. But it's hard to think that Tavita Pangai Jr. won't end up at another club next year, don't you reckon?
Yeah, did you see the way that Robinson responded when he was asked, do they want Pangai Jr. at his club? He just completely shut it. I've never seen that before. Maybe Robinson is the great...
You've changed your mind.
Yeah, within the space of 20 minutes.
It's hard to imagine Pangai not playing footy next year. I mean, he hasn't been sacked officially and formally by the Brisbane Broncos, but I think it's only a matter of time before that's made official and made public. So whether or not the NRL is going to register his contract, I think they're saying he won't. They're saying that he's going to struggle to do that, but I think when push comes to shove, he'll play next year. Won't be at the Brisbane Broncos, obviously, but I think there will definitely be a mountain of Sydney clubs lining up wanting to sign him because he has got stacks of talent. And as we've seen in the past, second chance in rugby league goes to those players who have talent.
Yeah, there's definitely clubs in Sydney that they could definitely benefit from his use, but I think Brisbane will benefit the most by getting rid of him because they really need that cultural shift and just to send a message to the rest of the players saying don't act up or this is what's going to happen. It'll be interesting to see what kind of salary he attracts. I think he's probably not worth any more than 600 or 700 at this point, especially the way he's acting out. So I think he's very selfish. So yeah.
Well, the other big news surrounding the game this week was obviously we touched on it in the intro the bite or non-bite or the nibble, whatever you want to call it.
It was obviously a bite
from Kevin Proctor on Sean Johnson. So you think it's a bite?
I think it was obviously a bite. Well, Johnson immediately complained saying he bit me, and then later on, then said he didn't want a penalty and that he's not going to give evidence in the judiciary as to a bite. But I think there's clear-cut evidence, and Henry Perenara was convinced enough to say that was a bite and to send him off for it, which changed the complexion of the game. Gold Coast was standing toe-to-toe with Cronulla until then, so it was disappointing for that to ruin the game, especially Kevin Proctor's 250th, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very pivotal moment in the game. So the bunker or Parramatta had to be sure it was a bite. And they were, which is why it resulted in him being sent off. But it's a weird one because we had the James Graham incident in 2012, which was 8 weeks, I think he got for the Billy Slater?
It was 11 weeks, but it included international games for some reason.
Okay. So that was the major one that I can remember. Then there's been 2 following that, and they've both been let off when it's gone to the judiciary. So that'll be Proctor's defence. And I think that Sean Johnson, he's felt a nibble on his arm. He's felt something on his arm. He's lashed out in the heat of the moment and gone, he beat me to get his side that penalty and to win the game. Because that won them the game. That changed the game. And now that the game's died down, he's thought, Proctor's my mate. I played for New Zealand for him. I don't want to see this tarnish his career. And now he's backtracking and doesn't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah, see, that's what I mean. In the moment, he just got the penalty and got the Proctor sent off. But I don't think I agree with Joe Johnson here. He shouldn't have made the allegation if...
No, I go through
if he made the allegation on the field, he should go through with it. Now he's going to provide a written statement and character reference to clear Proctor's name so that he doesn't get... suspended for up to 6 weeks. So I don't agree with Johnson here. I think it's very selfish.
I can see why he's done it though. Like in the heat in the game, when your team's on the line, you do anything to get your team across the line. So I can understand it from Johnson's point of view, but I really don't know which way this is going to go. This judiciary case.
I think they'll go ahead and say it's a bite. It doesn't matter what evidence is there because there's enough evidence on camera to show that he actually is gnawing his teeth into Sean Johnson's arm. So,
well, I actually think he's gonna get off with a very light suspension or nothing at all. To be honest, I think they'll use. Well, apparently he's got terrible sinus issues, and that's nothing to be laughed at because I'm a sufferer of that as well. He should have the surgery I had. But
Proctor has.
That's what he came out and said that he was struggling to breathe. Because Johnson's arm was around his face, around his throat. So, and in self-defense, he's bitten his arm.
But how can he choke him if his hand's in his mouth? That's what I don't know.
There's a lot of grey, a lot of doubt in it.
But yeah, he's facing up to 8 weeks, so that's nothing to sneeze at. So I guess Johnson's just trying to decrease the severity of it, which is fair enough, I guess. So he's probably just having a slight regret of making the allegation, so he's just trying to backtrack, I think.
Well, I think there'll be a suspension, but I think it'll be very light. Is my prediction. But for Proctor, I hope it doesn't tarnish his career. Well, we don't remember James Graham as a biter.
Of course you do.
You do?
Yeah, I remember it as the Vaseline seat, where he had poured Vaseline on his thighs so that he could...
I somewhat forgot that until I was reminded of it during the week. So I hope Proctor has the same kind of... We have short-term memory with Proctor, because he's had a very clean record in the NRL since he debuted.
Yeah.
He's only had one charge, I think they said, during the week.
Yeah, I think people just like to forget with NRL. It's a very fast-paced game and week to week, and there's always off-field indiscretions. And don't you remember when Nate Miles took a shit in the hallway? No one remembers that, but
I do.
Well, you do now that I mention it. But if you hear the name Nate Miles, you don't think of that incident.
Oh, I do.
Oh, you do? Okay, fair enough. Well, mate. Okay, I don't think this.
Russell Packer. What do you think of that when he comes?
I think of him stomping on someone's head as well as pissing on the field.
Yeah,
but I think of the stomping on the head first and going to Silverwater jail for a year.
Well, that judiciary is tonight with Proctor, so we will update you on Facebook as soon as that comes to fruition.
And now our weekly topic.
Your favourite segment, Alexander.
Why is it my favourite?
Oh, you love it.
That's a sloppy pass, that one.
Pass or play, Parra are the pretenders.
I think they are pretenders. And I'll go into a bit of analysis on that. So am I passing or running on that one? I would be running on the fact that they are pretenders. So I'll start with their half combination. They've got Dylan Brown and Mitchell Moses. And Mitchell Moses, I haven't been a total fan of. I think he really lacks game management. And I think it was exposed last week against the Dragons where his kicks and fifth tackle options were just a lot to be left for desired. And I think he relies a lot on Dylan Brown to step up. And it just seemed like Dylan Brown just went into hiding in that game. And I think in a big game, Dylan Brown may fall at the risk of going into that trap. And I think Gutherson, he had the game of his life. He ran 330 metres.
Well,
he is the key, I think, to their success.
Brown's only 20 years old, so that right there suggests they lack experience in key positions, which you touched on. We're missing in a big game. And Gutho, how did Gutho run for 369 metres in that game?
It didn't seem like he did.
He broke a record for all games ever.
Yeah,
losing side as well.
That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, he did get a lot of hands on the ball, but I didn't see him make that many hit-ups. And
I don't want to derail you. So they've got, win a premiership, you've got to have a good fullback, so tick. Experienced halves, probably not. And as you said, Moses does lack game management, and I think in big games, that'll be their downfall. A hooker, Reid Marnie, he's playing great footy. He's a good player. Again, only 20, 21 years of age. And a big forward pack.
Is he that young?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so they've got a great forward pack. That's the definite thing going
so,
forward.
Yeah, their forward pack is their strength. I think that has laid the foundation for their whole career. I mean, their whole season at the moment, especially with Nathan Brown. He's going leaps and bounds ahead of what he was ever expected to do. They got Regal Campbell-Gillard as well, and even Junior Paula. He's having a blinder of a season.
I mean, anyone can play off the back of those forwards. Even Sam Williams and Josh McCrone could play off the back of those forwards.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like any team that matches them forwards for forwards, I think they'll struggle with.
Yeah,
and any team that can defend reasonably, I think they'll struggle against. And in terms of competition, we're looking at the top 8 at the moment. And I think they can probably only convincingly beat one team currently in the top 8, and that's South Sydney. And they actually play South Sydney in a couple of weeks.
2 weeks, next Thursday week at Bankwest.
So that would be an interesting game. I know they've got Melbourne coming up this week, and they probably will win that game. But that's just because they've got severely understrength team where they've got Munster and Hughes is in doubt, Smith is in doubt, and they've also got Finucane as well out. And so I think they've also won a lot of close games this year. So they could have lost to Dogs twice. Manly they could have lost on a forward pass. Panthers and Raiders they easily could have lost with a slight bounce of the ball.
They've won numerous games by less than 4 points or less than 6 points.
Yeah, about six games where they've won or 6 or less. So I think Knights were very unlucky to not win against them, and Sharks actually lost on goal kicking against them. Yeah. So what people have been looking at Parramatta and been deciding on whether they're a good team or not, they're basing that on their performances against bad teams. So they're smashing the really low performing teams like Titans and Brisbane, and everyone's saying, "Oh, look how good Parramatta are." But those are the games where Moses and the forward pack can run free and just absolutely dominate. And it's those tough, gritty games that they struggle with.
Yeah. Well, you touched on it. The game against Melbourne on Thursday night. If they're genuine contenders, Parramatta, this is a game they have to win. They're up against a finals quality team, Melbourne, who I think are the major threat to the competition, but they've got stacks of players out. Munster, Cameron Smith, Jerome Hughes is named, but he's in doubt. I don't know if he'll play. Finucane's out, Vunivalu's out. So if Parramatta, and these are sort of games, when you're playing against a team before the finals, you get that mental edge. If you beat them in the round games, when you play them in the finals, in the back of your head you think, we've beaten these guys before, we can do it again in the big games. In those big moments, they've said, we've done this, let's do it again.
Exactly. If they lose this game, I think it'll really be a blow to their momentum.
Yeah, so it's
it could potentially
game.
It could derail their whole season. So I guess that leads into our pass for play. So are you passing on the fact that they're pretenders, or are you playing on the fact that they're pretenders?
I am playing. I think they're pretenders.
You think they're pretenders? Okay.
I'm running. Little Damien Cook scoot.
Yeah, I'm going to run on as well. I think they are pretenders, and while they are in the top 4, I think in a full round season, they probably would not be in the top 4. With the teams being able to rest their players and just have those buys. And I think Parramatta have really benefited from the COVID lockdown rule change. So, Yeah, I guess we'll see.
We look back to 2016, was it, when
Yeah.
they made top 4, went out back to back in straight sets, and they are a better team since then. But I think we could see a similar thing happening. I know there's a lot of Parramatta fans listening, but I hope I'm not right for their point of view. But I have some doubts.
Well, they've got to break the 42-year drought now since 83. I think. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 83 or 80. Yeah, 83 or 86.
86. It is.
86. That's
86.
right. Yeah.
So not quite 40. Not South Sydney. 42 years. Not that bad. But it's getting there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that go in towards Parramatta. A lot of 50-50s that usually don't go towards teams that just have been leaning towards Parramatta this season. And I guess the good teams do make their own luck, but it just seems they seem to be getting most of the rub of the green. So, yeah, I guess they've got to perform at a high quality in finals and hopefully win that first week so they can get the week off.
Yeah, it all starts Thursday night against Melbourne.
Yeah. That leads me into the bold prediction. So I'm actually going to say Melbourne are actually going to win this week. That's my bold prediction.
Wow, so they really are pretenders.
I'm going to say Hughes and Smith both play and just run amok over Parramatta. I think they've got a really good forward pack that can match the Parramatta team. They've got, Alpha Solomono coming off the bench. They've got Welsh. They've got, Bromwich. Kafusi still playing. And they got that guy that's going to the Titans, Farmer Sulisuli. Tino, whatever.
We'll call him Tino.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to go about it. But yeah, they can definitely match them in that forward pack. And they've still got Pappenhausen playing. And if Smith and Hughes do play, I think it will be an even 50-50 game.
I'm going to go for my bold prediction, a player that we've had some criticism towards a couple of weeks ago in Corey Norman. They're up against Brisbane Broncos, who were obviously struggling. And I think the Dragons, after that win last week, I think they're going to go on a bit of a roll. I think they're going to play some entertaining footy. Norman's going to be at the forefront of that. And I think he's going to get some confidence from this game against Brisbane and really have a strong end to the season.
Yeah, well, the next 3 games are against all 3 Queensland teams. So it'll be interesting to see how Dragons go. I think they're a bit far-fetched to make the 8. They've still got Newcastle, Raiders and Melbourne at the back end of the year, which I don't think they'll win any of those. But yeah, it will be a good test just to gain some confidence for young Dean Young as a coach. So
young Dean Young. All right, well, time flies when you're having fun, and that's all we've got time for tonight on the NRL Point of Difference podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe and like the page, and we'll see you next week.
All right, see you then.